Welcome to Braver Leaders, the podcast where we meet with some of the world's best leaders and chat through where they got leadership right, but importantly, where they got it very wrong. Where they stuffed it up, got reprimanded, suspended, or even fired, and all the gory details that go with it. Each week, we'll meet with a new leader, hear their trials, tribulations, and what they have learned from their experiences. Leadership isn't always pretty, is it? But by being vulnerable and talking about our shortcomings, you can grow the empathy within your team and show your team that you're worthy of their trust. So buckle up and let's get ready to hear what it takes to be a braver leader. Welcome to the Braver Leaders podcast, where we talk with leaders about what they got very right and also very wrong, and industry experts about their leadership knowledge. I am Sam Harvey, your host. I am a researcher. I am a podcast host, it turns out. I'm also the founder and director of Braver Leaders Team Performance and Leadership Development. Today, I am very, very, very excited to have my good friend Sally Duxfield on the podcast. Sally's dialing in all the way from Little Aotearoa, New Zealand, so it's probably about midnight for her. Thanks for joining us, Sal. How are you?
I'm great, and thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
Yeah, of course. And I'm going to let you, we talked about this, but I'm going to let you introduce yourself because we've got to keep it appropriate, apparently.
But you said you only had 45 minutes, and I'll be 35 minutes telling you how fabulous I am. So look, we've just got 10 minutes for content, all right? So briefly, my background is that of an operational military officer. So through the 80s and 90s, in the startup of the Army Aviation, and then into the Air Force, and then started my own consultancy. The last 9 years, I've been deep in the bowels of neuroscience. So I start a PhD journey next year, which you always do at 60, right? Crazy old lady. And what I'm doing is I'm a performance coach, and I am also a researcher, and I work with elite athletes and founders, young entrepreneurs, and I help them through seeking sustainable peak performance. So controlling the stress response, but really driving around sleep and supplements and the protocols to get you into deep sleep, particularly if you're traveling all the time. So performance coach.
Amazing. Wait, so you are going to do a PhD?
I am. I'm starting my PhD next year. I know.
When we spoke last about this, you were like, nah, let the science nerds do that. Okay.
Yeah.
Great.
So it's around that pace. Remember, I talked to you about when we miss the first cycle of our deep sleep, the glymphatic sleep, which is the first phase of sleep. When you wake up in the morning, you get this really high loading of norepinephrine, and norepinephrine is your anxiety. It's it's focus, it's all these things, but it drives the anxiety response. And my belief is about 70 or 80% of the depression, anxiety we're seeing in society is because we're not getting our deep cycle sleep, that first phase of sleep. And so therefore the brain hasn't cleaned itself. When you wake, it goes, I think you're a little bit not right for the day. I was going to say a word then, I won't say that word. And it'll load you with norepinephrine, which will keep you sharp, focused, but it'll also make you hypervigilant. So that's what I'm researching.
Yeah, I love that. We've talked at length about this, haven't we? So your belief, if I get this right, is that if you don't sleep, is it between like 10:30 and 12 in your time zone? Is that right?
Yeah, really great question, because my beliefs change. That's what I freaking love about science. Science means that you can have a belief and then you get more data, and then you go, you were such a dick believing that. Here's a new theory. So I've now done a lot more research into Dr. Matt Walker and Dr. Gina Poe's work. Matt Walker drives that it's based around your chronotype. So when you generally go to sleep every single night, that's your norm, and it will be in that front phase from whenever your normal bedtime is. Gina Poe's data has a strong bias for pre-midnight, 10:30 p.m. to 12 a.m. And that may be, when you look at the data, it may be because the people that were in that database, that was their generic bedtime, was 10:30-ish. So there may have been a bias for the chronotype in her data. But so my belief now has tweaked since we talked, is that it is the first 90-minute phase where you're getting your glymphatic sleep whenever your normal bedtime is. And if that changes, then you're missing that phase.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. I think I've been speaking recently on a leadership program I've been running actually in the Middle East that exactly about that. And so the chronotype, and then bringing in what you'd said about, okay, so there's a school of thought. So there's that first 90 minutes. But you're right, it doesn't quite stack up, does it? It must be based on your chronotype of in some way,
Yeah,
shape, or form, you would think, right? Because if I forget what the chronotype is that likes to sleep late and sleep late, wake up late, but that wouldn't make
yeah,
sense, would it?
yeah, that's right. So there's really neuroscientists are incredibly creative people. So they've got earlies, neutral,
Mm,
late, and late.
yep.
There's chronotypes, like really, really creative. So yeah. If you're a late, you're a 1 a.m. To 2 a.m. and then you're a 9 a.m., 10 a.m. get up. If you're an early, then you're
Mm,
a sort of 8:30 p.m. or 8 o'clock p.m. and you get up at 3 or 4 in the morning. So they go in that 7 8 hour phases,
yep.
sort of round about 8 o'clock, round about 10 o'clock, round about 11:30, round about 1 a.m. And they're the generic
Mm,
chronotypes. Yeah. So without
okay.
being too technical about it. So yeah, and it's only a very short slice in that 90 minutes. So it's only sort of 28 minutes to 30 minutes of this lymphatic. So it's a brain synchrony. So about 92% of the neurons get
Mm,
into synchrony and they bilge pump all the toxins out of the brain. But it only
mm,
happens for this tiny slice within that first 90-minute window. And so what it's saying, and the data is really strong, is that if your core body temperature hasn't dropped by 1 to 3 degrees, if you've got high levels of cortisol, and that's a whole nother thing about how to drop your core body temperature, but probably not for tonight. Um, if you've still got cortisol, so stress, if you've got high levels of dopamine from your devices and pleasure and eating and drinking, you'll go to sleep. And people say to me, I slept all night, and my data, my Fitbit says that I was amazing. Yes, but you may not have entered lymphatic sleep. So you may not have cleaned your brain up because your core body temperature hadn't dropped that 1 to 3 degrees and you didn't have enough melatonin load. Mm.
interesting. So that, I mean, our topic today is controlling your stress response when leading teams, and I think this is a fascinating way to kind of dive into it, right? Because as you've mentioned right at the start, so when that doesn't, the brain doesn't do its bilge pumping. For those of you that are not sailors, that's the bit in the bottom of a boat that gets all of the crap gets sucked out of and in over the side. Um, uh, if it doesn't do that, then you're waking up in the morning and your body is saying you didn't do enough, or you didn't sleep enough or rest enough, you didn't clean your brain, to use your terminology. I'm going to make sure that I'm going to look out for you now, right? It's sending
Yeah, you're
noradrenaline.
not fit for purpose. Yeah. Yeah, you're not fit for purpose. You woke up, you're a little bit cranky, you're a little bit phasey. And if the same thing happens when we wake up with a hangover or we've had short sleep, exactly the same thing. The pre-flight check in the morning, the brain goes, yeah, no, I don't think so. You might
Yeah.
get run over by a truck today. I'm going to load you with some drugs that's going to keep you hyper vigilant. And then if you've got other feelings behind that and you've got really poor sleep habits and your norepinephrine, your noradrenaline is quite high, it's going to
Mm,
load you with that sense of anxiety. You're going to literally lay in bed dreading putting your feet on the floor in the morning. You're going to look in the mirror and you're going to have those, generally, you'll have those thoughts when you look at yourself, is that you're useless, you're hopeless, look at you, no, it's the what if I'm not good enough? What if they find out? That imposter syndrome steps
mm,
in, that thought process, and then the whole day is just a bucket of cold milk. It's a really poor day. So,
mm.
and that just really starts from the night before. So, leadership for me is actually about self care.
Yeah.
Before I can lead, I have to
Mm.
serve myself so I can serve others.
Yeah.
So,
Couldn't
if
agree
I'm
more.
smoking and drinking and overeating and not exercising enough, then I'm, as a generalization, will not be a great leader because I am not nurturing my body, and therefore my stress response might be high, which means that I may not be listening very well in my workplace because of the neurobiological response to stress, which we can get
Okay.
into.
Yeah. Let's. I mean, so it it seems though that stress is often seen as as a part of leadership, right?
Mm.
People are in these positions of responsibility, big or small, really. Like it doesn't matter. There's this we were talking about this before as well. It doesn't really matter what your difficulty is. It's your difficulty. Um,
Mm.
and you know, it's often a part of leadership, isn't it? Of leading a team, of managing a team is yeah, it's going to be slightly anxiety inducing or stressful. And so what really it is necessary for people to kind of put their own oxygen mask on first, isn't it, to look after
Yeah.
themselves. But what do you think, what are some kind of early warning signs that people are responding in a bad way, that they are not taking care of themselves? What are they going to start seeing?
Let's start with a statement that stress is an enhancer. So stress is a performance enhancer. So stress is actually, as long as we've got a box around it and we can control and we understand it,
Yep.
then it's a performance enhancer. And we need stress. Otherwise, we're all fat, dumb, and happy and sitting on the street doing nothing because we're not stressed, right? We'd be on the beach drinking Mai Tais and there'd be no stress in our life other than our heart attack that's probably coming because of our low fitness. But what we would be seeing is the biological response to cortisol. Cortisol is our fight flight drug, it's our stress drug. Adrenaline is our energy. So we think of adrenaline as that fight flight drug, but in fact, adrenaline is what we wake up with on the
Mm,
premise we've slept well with really high levels of adrenaline, epinephrine. And that's what keeps us going for the day. And it lasts about 8 to 9 hours from waking through to just after lunchtime, 2 o'clock, it starts petering out. So you'll have that high energy in the morning.
mm,
Cortisol is the drug that the brain produces, and it's the primal part of the brain, the reptilian part of the brain, and it says the response, and it fires up the so cortisol comes from the adrenal glands, which are just under the shoulder blades. Not that you can see what I'm doing, but I look like a bat at the moment, a duck at the moment, because I'm putting my thumbs up to my shoulder blades, a little fat duck. So your adrenal glands is where your cortisol comes from, which is why you can get an aching back when you get really stressed.
yeah.
So the first thing that cortisol is going to do, and it does a couple of things almost at the same time, it will shut down your hearing by
Mm,
about 30%. So it's called auditory exclusion. And this is, when you think about this, you'll go, oh my gosh, that is so true. So you're in a leadership role and you're working away, you look up from your desk and there's somebody standing at your door and you don't want to talk to them because you're in the middle of something. So you get a stress response and
mm,
they chatter to you and you can see them, their lips moving and they're babbling and you're like, yep, yeah, well, and you've got a face that's not particularly inviting anyway. So your hearing shut down because your stress response come up. Your prefrontal cortex, and this is happening to them because your face like looks like a slap bum. So when you've got a face that's not inviting, there you go, I said it bum. When you've got a face that's not inviting, they're going to get this cortisol response. So there's now two of you
mm,
whose hearing shut down. Your vision's
mm,
gone from about 210 degrees to about 70 to 90 degrees. So now you're not watching periphery behavior or micro behaviors. You're not seeing the rest of your team. Your prefrontal cortex is shutting down by about 40%. So you and the person standing at your door are 40% more stupid than when they knocked on your door. And I don't know what their baseline is. Like we could be pushing it here. So when you think about those things, how many times have you had a discussion with somebody and perhaps a partner in the past? For all the married men out there, how many times have you gone to a cupboard door and opened the pantry and not being able to see something? And you're like, I can't find it. And your wife says, or your partner says, it's on the third shelf on the left behind the peanut butter. And like, no, I still can't see it. You can't see it because your periphery vision is shut down. Your prefrontal cortex is shut down because your partner had a face like a slap bum when they talk to you and it's actually their fault. So you've just given all the husbands in the world an example why they can't find something because of their stress response.
so
So
a man look is a man look is not a man's fault, is what you're saying.
it's not a man's fault and man's hearing. I know, isn't that blessings? It's only because I'm old and I can get away with saying that. But it is a physiological response to stress. So in the work environment, we're not actually comprehending those conversations. We're not actually hearing what those people are saying. We will be feeling physically in our body, we'll be feeling an increase in our heartbeat. Our breath rate will have gone up. So our
Mm,
blood pressure
mm,
goes up.
mm,
We some people may experience hot skin. They might experience really cold fingertips. People, when they get really, really anxious and very, very stressed, will get very cold fingers because the blood is now pooling around all my primary organs. It's trying to keep me safe, and it's also getting ready. It's going to my glutes and my quads so I can run away from the danger. I'll start getting a really sore neck and shoulders, really, really tense, because I'm getting ready to punch you or run away from you. So there's all these physiological responses that we would see in the workspace. Our answers become short, so we're snappy. So have you experienced some of those things?
Yeah, 100%. And so what's going on with the snappiness? Like what's that in response to? Is that because I want to get out of here quickly?
Because my subconscious brain has said that whatever's in front of me is a saber-toothed tiger. It's either dangerous, so I either have to punch it or run away. I don't want to have a conversation with a saber-toothed tiger. So I either find you really, really annoying and I have no time for you. So my EQ has dropped off and my emotional intelligence has dropped off because I haven't actively engaged it. So you remember systems 1, systems 2 thinking, Daniel Kahneman. So when we are stressed, it's very, very easy for us to revert to systems 1 thinking, which is snippy, sarcastic, just rolls of your tongue, no consideration of the damage that that type of language or conversation style might have on our team. Whereas when we have got our prefrontal cortex online, we're in systems 2 thinking. We're going to have those deep conversations. We're going to really think about questions. We're going to be curious. We're going to ask for more information. But as soon as cortisol comes on, the brain flips back and it goes straight into systems 1. So it's, I'm going to be sarcastic. I'm going to be short. I'm going to be sharp. I'm not thinking about it. And in fact, I had a coaching client the other week who he's a senior manager, and he said to me, I just had a conversation with my ex-wife, and he said, I spoke to her and I was the man I used to be and I didn't want to be. Since our coaching has started, he's evolved and he's thinking about his conversations and he's articulated the man he wants to be. As soon as his wife, that friction came on, that habitual poor behavior, just he said it was so natural, and I was sitting there being sarcastic and mean, and I'd given him, remember I talked to you about putting a little flicky wristband on, and when you're being a bit of a dick, give yourself a flick, and if I didn't, you should do it. And it cognitively breaks the stress cycle. So you can put a rubber band around your wrist, and when you recognize that you're in systems 1 and you're being snippy snut, give yourself a little frick, and it'll bring you back into systems 2 thinking, from that overwhelmed head to the blue head. And he said he just in that moment realized under stress, he becomes the man he doesn't want to be.
Interesting. And so there's some little kind of coping, that's a great little coping strategy, isn't it? So that if that means to you, I'm going to snip, as you say, the
little wristband,
it brings you out of that to go, okay, so it's a reminder to perhaps breathe deep, calm, and then flip back into system 2 thinking, which is slower, more purposeful. Okay, where do I need to be, right? And so what other strategies are there that that leaders can employ? Because realistically, if things are taken out of our and perhaps actually the question that comes before this is what role does self-awareness play in this? Because it must be fairly massive, you would think, that how do people even know that this is happening to them to then go, oh, okay, I need to stop now, I need to change. But maybe that's the question before we get to what are the strategies.
Yeah, and it's a really good question, because it means there have to be courageous conversations and you have to seek feedback on yourself, which is really uncomfortable.
Well,
so if you've got high EQ,
it very rarely happens the higher you go, right? So the higher people go in organizations, people stop giving them feedback, right?
Yeah. And they stop being curious because they don't want to know, because then they'll have to address those. Do you remember there was a book written by Zinger and Folkman, and it was called The Extraordinary Leader, and they had a framework of a tent with 5 poles. So the 4 outer poles and the center pole, and the center pole was character. And it was the one pole that could not be compromised. So the other poles in this framework could be lower. One pole could be short, and that could be your business acumen. It could be your fiscal acumen. It could be your communication. But basically by working on the other poles, so working on your strengths, pulled up, moved that ceiling, that roof of that tent. Whereas they were saying, don't work on your weaknesses, work on your strengths, and by attrition, it will pull up your weaknesses because you'll get more confidence and more insight into your weakness, and it will come up. But the one thing that was uncompromising, it was and it was considered a fatal flaw, was this character, the center pole, and a lack of awareness of self. And so in leaders, for me, it's really, really important that we are curious about how we are being received. And if you've got high EQ, you'll notice in the micro behaviors. Like I'm a bit of a witch when it comes to reading micro behaviors and getting feedback from people really, really quickly. And I can say something and immediately see the response in their face and think, because even though I'm a blunt person, I have a deep, deep empathy. I do not want to hurt somebody. I don't mind offending somebody, but I don't want to hurt somebody. And so my EQ spikes when I watch somebody's facial expression, and then I will lean into that space and be curious and say sorry, and then see if we can continue that conversation. But you need to get the feedback first so that you understand how your speaking affects people and how you treat them. And even body language will shut some people down. Just the tone of your voice, not the words. And do you remember there's always that lovely saying, people will never remember what you said to them, but they'll remember how you made them feel.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, 100%. And there's I mean, I guess this comes into how different people communicate in general in different cultures. And I mean, a lot of cultures, you're about to go and spend a bunch of time in Asia and over here in the MENA region, right? Like, they are very high context communicators here, right? So that body language and the unsaid means an awful lot to them, right? So the way that they the way that they get messages across is not through direct language like you and I. Ours is as direct as perhaps the Swedes or the Germans, but like exactly. Taking that into account and then coming over here and going, oh, okay, that's interesting. So then, if you think of it that way, then these people are communicating through a whole lot of body language. The stress responses to that must be off the charts.
Because you can't express yourself, right? So, and you're trying to suppress normal, natural responses to stress. You asked the question before, what are some of the things, tools that we could use to decrease that stress response? And in that same sentence, you said to me about some breath work. You said we could take some deep breaths. So breath is probably the quickest decrease of the cortisol stress response that you can use. So breathing in through your nose and out through your mouth. So none of this, don't be doing that. So it's out through pursed lips. So in through nose, out through you. So you're trying to extend that out breath. Probably not in front of your team. Probably go to the cupboard and do this because you do look like a bit of a dick, right? So you're just about to have this conversation with your this person.
I'll be back in a minute.
Do this in the cupboard or in the coffee room. But the 2 seconds longer is the key time. So if you breathe out, if you're really stressed and you're breathing in quickly, you just have to breathe out 2 seconds longer than what you breathed in.
Yeah, and that's shown to slow your heart rate, right?
Yes, and why? Why do you think the subconscious brain would shut down the stress response when you're breathing out for 2 seconds longer? Why do you reckon?
Because if you're in flight or fight mode, you're going to be your out breaths are going to be much shorter, so you're kind of in and out very quickly. I don't know, I'm guessing, but
because you're running away from the danger, right? So as soon as you slow your breath work, your subconscious through your vagus nerve up and down your spine, so it's a polyvagal system, and basically the brain you'll slow your breathing down, that your heart and lungs send a little message up to the brain that says we're slowing down. And as soon as the brain receives that slowing down, it sends a message down the vagus nerve, so polyvagal, back down, and says to the adrenal glands, you can shut down that stress response. They're all chilled out here, baby. We're all quiet. And so you can just through breath work.
Good up here, babe.
Just settle your pedal. In turn, if you're going to a meeting and you want to be really alert, and this is with our elite athletes, right? It's pre-game, and we use some eye tracking technology, and we get pupil dilation, and that'll tell us your adrenal level, particularly specifically norepinephrine, noradrenaline. And so if they're too low in norepinephrine and adrenaline pre-game, we would give them some breath work to increase their adrenaline. So we'd give them some like that 5 times, 5 sets of that. Your adrenal will be off the scale because you've just said your subconscious brain is a fucking great saber-toothed tiger in the room. I need to get ready to run away from it. So you can use breath work to go up and down. So that would be my primary go-to. The second one comes from Gazing Performance, and it's a mental skills tool called Red to Blue, which is red head to blue head. It's what was introduced to the All Blacks by Dr. Kerry Evans, a psychiatrist, who had been working in the UK with some other men. And he came back to New Zealand to introduce the red to blue mental skills model to the All Blacks in 2011, helped massively with our next 2 World Cup wins. He's separated from Gazing. Gazing now own the red to blue content, word, title. Red to Blue belongs to Gazing in the UK. Amazing people. You can become a facilitator with them. And their skills are things like using a grounding technique. So if you remember our famous All Black captain, Richie McCaw, Richie would bang his right foot on the ground. So you would see him, first thing he'd do is he would look up and around the stadium. He'd look up and he'd look 180, not quite 180 degrees, that would be weird, but look up and look around. And that pulled him from tunnel vision. So if you watch the videos of him as a young man, his head would go down as soon as he became overwhelmed. And we have this, when we become overwhelmed and we become stressed, we want to hide or we want to run. So he would look up around the stadium, which would pull him out of tunnel vision. He'd bang his foot and he'd say, I'm here, I'm present. So you could just give your hand, let your thigh a little slap. You could flick your fingers, give yourself a little flick with your band that you're all going to go out and buy. I do give little black ones, little black bag.
Can I have, are they arete?
No, it says don't be a dick.
Oh my God, I need one of those for sure. And we were talking about this before, right? Like you asked me, because I've had a shitty year, and you asked me, what are you doing about it? And I said, well, my thing at the moment is actually breathe in the present, breathe out the past, right? And so and every time I do it, it's wonderful, because I'm like, okay, breathe in the present, breathe out the past. And every time I do it, I'm like, oh, I find myself going, oh, look where I am. Cool. And it's that bringing yourself right back into the present, isn't it? Just giving yourself that permission to be present, and then finding what works for you. Because when you're in the present, everything else kind of falls away, doesn't it?
It does. And remember, we also talked about the RAS, the reticular activating system. It's this little tiny top bit of the brain, and it's a filter, and it filters millions of pieces of data every minute, like millions of pieces of data. And it filters. I don't know if you've ever had this experience, but you've decided to buy a car, a model of car, and you go out on the street and you just about fall over the model, like it's there everywhere you look. It's like you can't unsee it. And I've just done this wonderful thing with all my clients about the little Suzuki Jimny. Those god awful little square cars that I don't know that. Have you noticed?
Sadly, I do, because I'm also from New Zealand, but I haven't seen them over here.
Oh, really? Well, no. I'm going to pull up my phone, which is really bad, but I'm going to show you something. I am running with all my clients. I've now told them about this Jimny. And I'm getting photos from airports all around the world of Jimnys from my clients traveling. One of my clients, he took me to Ayers Rock recently to work with his team, and he literally went straight to South America to go on a psychedelics camp, as you do, and he landed and there was a Jimny right there. So I've literally got everyone's RASs all around the world looking for freaking little Jimnys and the horrible cars. So that's what the RAS does. It finds what it thinks is important to you, and it finds evidence to support it. So you wake up in the morning, you lay in bed, and you think the first conscious thought is, rather than savoring the moment, breathing in and breathing out the past, laying in bed and going, I'm here. I've woken up to another morning. I've got a pillow. How lucky am I because there's many people and there's millions of people in the world that don't have a pillow.
Mm.
And that then sets the tone for the day. Yeah, you've got 4. How lucky are you? That's 4 lots of lucky in the morning. Clever little soldier. So you set up your brain, and now what happens is that you look outside and the sun's come out and like, oh my God, look how amazing that city is. And then all of a sudden you smile at somebody and there's this building. It's like a snowball. It's just building, 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 because the brain is finding the evidence to support what you've told it is important.
Yeah, got it.
Invert that, and you wake up and go, it's going to be a shit day. I'm really worried about that. You literally walk out to the kitchen and you step in the catsuit, and then you go, oh, and then you go to the car and you've got no petrol, and then you hop outside and it rains and you haven't got an umbrella, and it's just the cycle of doom, and it's embedding. The RAS is now finding everything it possibly can to support the fact that today's going to be a shit sandwich.
Okay,
and so that's the power we have.
And so, yeah, right. So this is that phrase, choose your weather, is at work, right? And I guess my question then is, so if we have a shit night's sleep because we don't get our 90 minutes of restorative sleep at the start of the night, or we go to bed at 1 a.m., or we've had some alcohol or whatever, and you don't get your restorative sleep, so you wake up and you've got a high spike of norepinephrine because that's right, norepinephrine.
Look at you go.
I know, thank you. I've read your books.
Taught you well.
You taught me well. I've read your books. All of the books that you gave me, I'm trying to travel light, Sally, and you're like, here's another one. Oh my God. So if you had this spike of norepinephrine in the morning, you're hypervigilant, it's going to be really hard to say it's going to be a great day, isn't it?
Yeah. So what you can do is, in that moment, have your coffee and go, who am I here to serve today? This is a question I ask myself every time I don't feel like being nice to people, which is quite often because I'm a strong old introvert. So when I go out and I speak to clients, I have to be really nice to them, apparently. So I always walk in the door in an office environment, see my team, and I think subconsciously, who am I here to serve today? Because that first 30 to 40 minutes of my interaction every morning, the purpose of a leader and a manager is to serve their team. It's not to get out of the car and go to the desk and work on that piece of work. How delusional. We all do it. We arrive, we hop up in the morning, and we think, today when I get to work, I'm going to do this. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm going to do 1. No. Put that all this side. That happens after I fulfilled my leadership role, which is to walk in the door, eyeball every man and woman that works for me and go, have you got everything you need to be successful? What do you need from me today? And then I serve my team. And you cannot have a shit day. You cannot have a shit day when you serve your team and you fulfill your purpose. Yeah.
Nice. I love that. Okay, great. All right. Those are some really good tips. What if, so let's say your colleague with his face like a slapped ass has walked in. You said slap bum before. I'm just going to take that out and say slap ass.
You're going to escalate. I'll be very careful what you wish for.
True. Careful.
We can escalate.
Exactly. So a colleague walks in with a face like a slapped ass. You've got the slapped ass response face. You're both now in cortisol stress. Your top tip was breathing to get back to kind of a regulated state, I'm guessing. What else is there that, like, both of you are kind of, at each other there? What can you do in that moment as a leader to effectively kind of lead your team member to get you both back down?
Yeah, so I'd go back one step. As somebody comes into my office and they've got a face like a slapped bottom, I'm going to de-escalate. So you can tell that they are angry or they're upset. So my curiosity as a leader trumps my stress response. So my curiosity as a leader trumps my stress response, because my first role as a leader is to nurture and then to guide. So nurture first and then guide. So I want to be curious about the face on this person. So rather than coming in, sit down, I'd say, hey, come with me. And I'd literally walk out of my office and I'd expect them to follow, because most people do. And then I'd grab them a cup of tea. Let's go. Let's just walk and talk. Let's walk beside each other. Let's go and stand at the plate glass window and look out over Dubai. Let's go in. Let's not sit front to front, because as soon as we sit face to face, we're back in this. And particularly males, sorry to be disrespectful, but you get this really alpha confrontation thing. So it would be, if you did go with them, if you went on that journey with them, it would be breath work, but it would be to stand up from your desk. It would be to look out your window. So I would stand up, look out my window, and then I'd come back into the conversation with them. But I would not sit at my desk and front to front with them. So my first response is see their face, be curious, be deeply curious. I can feel how upset you are. I can see how upset you are. So I see you. Let's go and grab a cup of tea. Let's go and grab a coffee. Let's talk about this. And then let's be curious. So hopefully two people wouldn't end up in that confrontation. So it's to try and avoid that. But the one thing you could do is, if it came in and they shut the door and they slammed the door, I'd stand up at my desk and I'd just turn away from them, and I would literally look at the window. If you have got a window, I guess you could look at your painting on the wall, but you might look a bit weird. But you could just look at the corner. But it would be too, or if you hop up to my desk and come around, come round and move my chair around for my desk so that I'm L-shaping them. I'm not sitting across them. So I change environment first, and then word second.
Love that. I think there's lots of things going on in my head. The first thing was I imagine that would be easier for the feminine than the masculine, and you kind of touched on it by saying men. I think in general, the curiosity, transformational leadership is easier for the feminine, isn't it? And it's this kind of not to dive down this rabbit hole today, but that ability to kind of go, hey, it's all good, let's go for a walk, I think, and not sit across from one another would be easier for the feminine. But I love that as like a challenge to all the men, and rather than saying masculine, it's generally men who are masculine, but that is a generalization, isn't it? But that are rather than being combative, de-escalating, as you've been saying, right, rather than continuing to escalate.
Curious. My favorite term, and it's my next book, is soft strength. So I want men and women to make, I want leaders with no gender bias. So I want leaders to make critical business decisions with their brains. And then once the decision's been made, I want them to lead with their hearts.
Yeah, nice.
Because you can't make critical business decisions with your heart. Because if I give the metaphor of a submarine and we have a leak in a compartment, I'm going to have to shut down a compartment, and there's going to be 6 of my sailors on the other side. I can't not shut down. I can't not make redundancies. I can't not save the company. So I have to be able to make those critical business decisions, traumatic, difficult, really, really heart-wrenching decisions with my brain, with no emotional. So I just want data. I want the clinical ability to go through a critical making process, make the decision, and then what's left, I then lead that decision with my heart. So I'm deeply empathetic. I understand with the crew that we're now 6 less. We needed to do that. So now I'm going to nurture the team that are left here. And so I've got to rebuild that trust again, because I've just killed 6 of their mates. I've just made 200 people redundant. But I can't make business decisions, with my heart, because my company will go bust.
Got it. Okay.
So it's that leading, and it is you being able to segue between the two. And my gorgeous associate Sally Duxfield, who's in Singapore, she and I started a company called Velvet and Steel, and it was called Velvet and Steel because she was an ex-military officer with me who served with me, and one of the things that we taught, or I taught her initially, was this ability to be deeply nurturing and then absolutely clinical steel when I have to cut your head off. So I will do everything I can for you, but then I'll release you to the wild. So, there's got to be a point, right? And it's very, very difficult to not personalize that that critical decision making. But of course, you can't make that when you're in an overwhelmed state. So decreasing the pitch and tone, sitting down will de-escalate. Softening, quietening your voice will de-escalate. As they're ramping up, you should be going down. If you watch special forces operators talk really, really quietly like this. I just need you to come in, I just need you to do this. They don't ramp up. As soon as we ramp up, we fire the stress response.
Yeah, got it. And that's something they'll teach you in coaching, right? Is think about whether you want to match or not match your client's energy, right? So what are they doing and what are they showing? Then how do you bring them down or up based on what they need right now? Okay, great. I love that. And I think, that I particularly like the part about changing position and not being, so whenever we set a room up, we will make sure there's no tables in a room. So people are not sitting. So because our whole thing is connection, right? Connect, be vulnerable, and show a different way to lead. If you put a table in between each other, it's like a battleground, as you said, isn't it? You're facing each other. It's like, right, we're doing business over this table. Take that out, and all of a sudden you have a different energy in the room, right? And so the ability to think about, what am I doing? What am I contributing to this? Rather than this person's walked in, they're pissed off. It's them. There's still both of you at play, right? And you've got the ability to bring them up or down. And I'm wondering,
and the leader, the leader, you're a grown up. Like, you have to be a grown up. We talked about it. Grown upping is hard graft, man. It's overrated. But as a leader, you're the freaking grown up. Don't go down the rabbit hole. So it's practicing. And then we go to coaching. So then we go to, you need to have a business coach. Everybody needs a coach, because you need to be able to go, I did this worked for me and this didn't work for me. And if you haven't got a business coach, then just even journaling at night. So what did I do today that I'm going to repeat tomorrow because it's freaking gold? It really, really worked for me. And then in the morning, so it's really interesting with timings of when we do reflection. So critiquing, we do in the morning. So we're sitting having a coffee, we critique ourselves, and that we might be hard on ourselves. We do that in the morning. But we've got all day to get rid of the stress response when we tell ourselves we were a dick yesterday and we were inappropriate, or we shouldn't have said that, or perhaps we could have said it a different way. We do that in the morning. Nighttime, we are patting the dog. Nighttime, I am only thinking about what I said and did today that worked for me, that I'm going to repeat, because I'm trying to decrease my stress response. I don't want to wake up in the middle of the night churning over what I wrote in my journal about what a shit leader I was and what a bad decision I made. So pat the dog at night, critique in the morning when it comes to journaling.
Okay, great. So that's a great tactic for a leader. Well, there's some great tactics for a leader in general in there. What can they do to model that? So what kind of behaviors can they bring into the workplace which show people, hey, look, I'm decreasing my stress response, and how they model that so that people understand that it's a conscious thought process?
Yeah, good question. So I always love what I call a tailgate in the morning, and it's a start of setting my team up to be successful. So a tailgate is, in New Zealand, we have utes, a vehicle that's got a tailgate that drops. And farmers and forestry workers all go to the ute, and they're all blokes, and they've got their bush shirt on, and they put their foot up on their wheel, and they go, "G'day, how are you today?" And you have a tailgate, right? And the tailgate, the team talk about the first jobs that are coming up, who needs some help today, which paddock they're moving the sheep to, and everybody then goes around the farm as they formed a team, and now we're going to disperse. But in an office, we generally arrive, go to our desk, put our bag down, get a coffee, and work on our own. And we might not speak to anybody else or interact as a whole for 2 or 3 hours, if at all. So for me, the behavior I want to show as people is I'm going to form them as a pod in the morning. I'm going to pull my whole team in, and we're going to have literally a stand-up coffee. It's just in the corner. It could be a round table that's out in your general space. If it's an open plan office, choose an area that you're just all going to literally a set time when every team member's in. So generally, people start arriving from 6 till 9 a.m. Generally, everyone's in by about 9 a.m. So at 9 a.m., it's a cup of tea, everyone stands, and I would literally articulate or verbalize to my team, what do you need from me today? Have you got everything that you need to be successful? And is anyone really stressed today who needs our help? And somebody might put up their hand and go, I've got that proposal to have out by lunchtime. I've got that settlement. Could no one disturb me this morning? And we go, right, we've got you. No problem at all, Jane, we've got you. And somebody would hop up during the morning tea and go and take Jane a cup of tea, because we know, and we'd actually say to her at that meeting, give us your cell phone and I'll take your cell phone, I'll take all your calls for you. So that behavior in itself says to my team, I've got you back.
Nice.
If we've got friction, when they see two of us, they hear a raised voice, but they see two of us walking out and they see us having a coffee, and they see me as a leader handling it in a certain way. When they come to us and they're stressed, and I lean into that and I'm curious with them and I'm deeply empathetic, then they will start to feel that actually that's how we deal with stress in our team. This is how we can control that stress. And then I was at a leader, I'd always check in about, generally my second check-in of the day is 2:30ish, because what that means is that if anybody's got a big piece of work that they need information for tomorrow, it gives somebody time to get that work. There's nothing worse than the boss that comes in at 4:45 and goes to their EA, I need those files for tomorrow morning. And then they piss off and go and play golf, and the EA's left there till 7:00 at night finding all that information and data. Whereas the boss knew they needed it at 11:00 in the morning, but they just didn't delegate that out. And the other thing, I'm just going to quickly segue to delegation now. I've said that word. Delegation is probably the greatest cause of friction in a leadership environment, because accountability is courageous and accountability is very, very difficult. And what happens is when people don't get stuff back on time, it becomes embarrassing. It feels, you will have done this yourself. You've asked somebody, you've a business partner, you've got an expectation that they'll have something to you. They don't. You ask 2 or 3 times. You stop asking because it's embarrassing. And then you just do the shit yourself. And now I'm actually really pissy at that person because they didn't get it back. And I'm doing their work. So either they're underperforming or they're very manipulative because they've got their boss doing all their work for them. So delegation is really important. Not only does it have a day that it's backed by, but it has a time on that day. It has a lead-in conversation, which is, what does good look like? So I'd like you to do this task. Talk me through what that might mean to you. So I know that they've got it. And then my responsibility is, if I want it back Thursday, my responsibility is Tuesday morning to ring, eyeball, see that person and say, how are you tracking with that information for 2:30 on Thursday? Are we still on task? Do you need anything from me? So as a delegator, I have a massive responsibility to communicate and make sure that that person has everything they need. At 2:35, and it was due at 2:30, it's a phone call in my desk, don't sit down. It's a big, stern, courageous hat, because now you have underperformed. Now we have a performance issue. So, and we ignore it. And then the person's feeling guilty as well, and that's causing friction and tension.
Well, and the more you let it ride, the more you let it away, right? The more people go, oh, okay, so if you give me something that doesn't, and you give me a deadline, that doesn't actually matter.
It doesn't matter, it doesn't matter now, because you're going to do it anyway, because you just keep taking shit off me. And when you say to me, I'll just leave it there, I'll do it, you've just said to that person, I don't think you're confident, I don't think you've got the skill to do it. So a leader who gets stressed and overwhelmed often says, I don't have time to have a conversation, I don't have time to coach you, just leave it there, I'll do it. So you've just said to that person, I don't believe you're confident to do that piece of work. So I'm absolutely disabling them or enabling them to not perform.
You got it. Okay.
Really interesting. But that's,
mate,
that's another hard thing.
So fascinating. And just like the kind of, there's so many different avenues that, I mean, it really stress underlines everything, doesn't it? But I love your framing at the start, and I want you to kind of wrap up for me and give me your 3 key takeaways. But because otherwise we will be here all day, or night for you. And you've got a beautiful, place in the mountains and stars to go and hang out, and you don't need to be talking to me. We need to understand that stress is necessary, right? And I say this a lot, looking at the Yerkes-Dodson stress curve is something I use a lot, and just saying, actually, if we're sitting down here in apathy, it's useless to us, right? We actually need to be up on the stress arousal curve and up at that good point before we tip over and into the place where we don't have the resources to perform, right?
Mm.
So
Yeah.
what are the, and then when we do tip over or start to, this is where you're coming in here, right? To say, well, here's some ways to actually to pull it back. So what are your three key takeaways for us, Sal?
My first one would be the reframing piece. So if I start to feel my heart rate going up and my breath rate going up, and I'm starting to feel, I would verbalize to myself that I think I'm feeling stressed.
Got it.
I'd literally take a step back from that. I'd look out the window and go, it's going to get really exciting about now, because that feeling in my gut, that noradrenaline in my gut and that cortisol is telling me I'm about to learn something, and it's fucking exciting right now. So when you're sitting on the edge of that precipice and you're starting to say to yourself, I'm so stressed, reframe it. Like, I'm about to be stretched. How cool is this? Yeah. So that's the first thing, would be reframe stress to being a performance enhancer. And when we start to feel discomfort, that's fantastic, because that's the edge of the next adventure. So that's the first. Secondly, is to understand and literally keep a journal note of what you're physically feeling over the next month. When you perceive that you're stressed, take a minute. If you say to somebody, I'm so stressed at the moment, stop at the moment, because are you using the right word? Which is, actually, I'm so fucking disorganized. I'm a cluster. Actually, that's making you feel stressed, but that's not stress. That's a lack of organization. So write it down. So so really, really catalog how you feel stress in your body. So is it my sleep gets affected? Is it I gorge eat? Is it I drink too much? What are the behaviors that you can then start to recognize in yourself? So so that would be the second thing. And the third thing is to understand that as the leader, you are the grown-up. So your de-escalation comes through your facial expression, your body expression, and your pitch and tone. So when somebody is in stress in your organization, that's in your team, that softer conversation of, hey, let's go for a walk, let's talk this through. What is it I can do from you? How can the team serve you? What is it you need from me? Just that conversation, that somebody at a subconscious or a conscious level knows that they're seen and that you've heard them, that in itself will decrease their stress. So it's know yourself under stress, know what your team look under stress, and see if you can have some really vulnerable conversations with your team about what they might be seeing in each other. So if I see somebody who shuts themselves down and isolates, I know that person well enough to know that that's the first symptom of stress in them. They pull themselves away from the tribe. They're probably in a state of stress. Somebody else might get really loud and overtalk everybody all the time. That's their first trigger that we would see as a team. So as a team, I'd open that conversation as, what might I see in you when you're stressed, so that I can then serve you in that environment.
Amazing. Beautifully put. Thank you, my friend.
My pleasure. My pleasure. It's so nice to talk to you. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Yeah, no, all good. And I'm genuinely very, very, very appreciative of your time. Let's do it again, I think, actually. I'm pretty sure we could do a few of these. So maybe we do a little Sally Duxfield series.
That would be very good. Have you got 32 hours spare?
Maybe we could record one in a ret. Let's do it.
Well, you see, Huberman and Matt Walker did 12.5 hours of video around sleep. So I reckon we should give that a little bit of a nudge.
Give it a nudge.
Not around sleep, but around lots of other leadership things. Yeah. But anyway.
Okay. Thank you very much. And if you've liked this podcast, please like, subscribe, share it with your mates. Jump online and check out our free resources on braverleaders.com. They are there for yours, for the taking. Thank you again, Sally. It's been a pleasure, and we will speak to you all soon.
Thanks for tuning in to Braver Leaders, the podcast where we discuss with leaders where they got leadership right, but also where they got it very, very wrong. If you'd like to know more, visit us on braverleaders.com, or you can email us directly on team@braverleaders.com. Stay tuned, and we'll see you very, very soon.